This is the strange thing about life. When people are confronted, they all say that the truth is what they want. But when the truth disagrees with them, they balk at it as if it were an unwanted zombie apocalypse that only wants to destroy civilization. And this week's opening quote comes from Leviac B. Kelly. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Egan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I will be your host for the next hour. Well, it's good to be back, folks, and it's nice to have some positive information for you. We've actually had a pretty major victory here with the whole 5G rollout in the area that I'm living. There was a big council meeting on the Gold Coast the other day, and a whole bunch of people attended, and we actually stopped 5G being rolled out in this area. When I say we, I use the term we tentatively because I wasn't actually at the meeting personally. I had an interview to do and a few other things to do, so I just wasn't able to get there, but they have managed to stop it rolling out in this area. And what they've used to do it, as I've mentioned before, is the Queensland Criminal Code, by identifying what constitutes an assault and applying the Queensland Criminal Code to the 5G rollout. And the clincher for them, apparently, I mean, as I said, I wasn't there, but the clincher was when the barrister informed the local council members, because they were going to just push it through anyway, but when the barrister informed the local council members that they would also be held personally liable for assault and could personally face charges for assault should they approve this rollout, they stopped the rollout. So that's how it works, folks. If you are dealing with people and you let the people know that they will be held personally accountable, and that's what you've got to remember, is that what you're dealing with here is people. It doesn't matter if it's a council member or whatever, it's a person. And if this person is signing a document which says you are going to be put under assault simply because they put their signature on a piece of paper, well then that is the person who is liable for that assault. See, that's the thing, folks. I mean, an assault is an assault, and a politician cannot legislate that someone is allowed to assault you. If a politician is to write this into legislation, then that politician themselves becomes liable for assault. That's the way it works. And that's what they used, and the council members stopped the 5G rollout pretty quickly once it became known to them that they were going to face charges themselves. The local telco, Telstra, can still appeal the decision apparently, but we'll just see how that goes. There's more to it yet. It isn't completely over yet, but and we know they're going to continue to keep trying to push this. But that's how we did it, and we've actually had success, and it shows that this method does actually work. So that's a bit of good news for people, and something hopefully people can apply to the area that they're living in as well, and stop the rollout in their own area. Because it's an assault, folks. The whole rollout of this system is an assault against you. They even tried to tone it down here where I live. They were going to be rolling out this big 5G tower, and then they changed it to a 4G plus tower. The question is, what is that? 4G plus. What is the plus for? 4G plus, what? Plus one? I mean, they just have new ways of wording things, folks. They want to lead you ultimately in the same direction. But anyway, that's a nice little piece of information to start the show with, folks. A little victory that I thought I would share with you and hopefully inspire others to take this type of action in their own community. Because it does work, and we've just shown that it does work because we've just done it here. And not only that, but I believe that this same approach is now being adopted by people in the Northern Rivers area, not too far from where I live as well, and these people are adopting this method and applying it to schools in the area because they wish to stop Wi-Fi in the schools, because this is really affecting the children in a very negative way. And so there's a huge action of parents and very aware people that are also using these state criminal codes in order to prevent the children from being subject to this type of electromagnetic radiation at school. And it's a great thing, folks. A lot of people seem to have really got on board with this, and I had a feeling this was going to happen. I had a feeling that there was going to be a lot of people that were going to suddenly slip into a far more conscious state once it became known to them just how dangerous 5G is. And it's been really good to see, folks. It's very inspiring to see so many people stepping up to the plate now. People you wouldn't even expect, people who are non-conspiratorial, people who don't even listen to the independent media or anything like that. Just normal people are just realizing what this is and what it's going to do to them, what it is doing to their children and their actually standing up and paying attention and realizing that they can make a difference if they make their voices heard. So it's been really good to see, folks, and I hope it spreads around the rest of the country. I really do. And I hope it inspires people in other countries as well to realize that you can make a difference if you simply stand up for yourselves. You know, enough is enough, folks. This whole 5G system is going to be a terrible thing if they manage to roll it out. And the only thing that's really going to prevent it is us. And so it's important that we do pay attention and get involved on the ground where we live. It's so important that we do this. You might be hearing a few peacocks walking across the roof at the moment, folks. If you're hearing some strange noises, I can hear a lot of peacocks up on the roof, so you'll probably be getting that on the radio show. I do apologise for that. The joys of living in the country. So yeah, just wanted to share all that with you. But getting on to other things, you know, the whole concept of controlling the opposition, the only way to control the opposition is to lead the opposition. This whole concept, I mean, it's definitely how you would want to deal with opposition. If it was coming for you, you'd want to lead it and control it, so you control the narrative on both sides. And it's become very apparent to me over the last 11 years of being on the radio. This is very much what's going on with the independent media. You know, a lot of the independent media, the so-called truth movement, a lot of it, I would suggest, has been a fishing exercise, and a lot of it has been designed specifically to control the narrative and lead the narrative in a certain direction. You know, the mainstream narrative is certainly led in a certain direction, absolutely. But as I said, it's become very apparent that this is not just happening in the mainstream, it's also happening in the independent media as well. The independent media has become a place, you know, the truth movement, the whatever you want to call it, has become a place where no free thinking is allowed. You know, there is always a certain narrative that is pushed, and if anybody thinks outside that narrative, they are black-jacketed straight away. They're called a shill. This is something that's really become prominent. It became prominent when 9/11 happened. You know, the 9/11 truth movement was a great example, actually, of how the narrative is controlled and how a D&D operation is run, a diffuse and disrupt operation. Because that's what we saw in 9/11. You know, the 9/11 truth movement was actually making a reasonable amount of headway. It was actually reaching quite a few people. And then suddenly it was infiltrated and it was diffused by disruption. And this disruption and diffusing always takes place in the form of arguments over details that people can't possibly know. For example, in 9/11, we know that the official story is wrong. We know that it wasn't 19 hijackers with box cutters. There's just no way this was possible. And we'd got some pretty good focus on that. You know, we'd got people paying attention to the fact that the buildings collapsed at free fall speed and none of this is possible. But then right as we were starting to make a difference, it got infiltrated and suddenly the debate became about whether it was thermite that was used to bring the buildings down, or whether it was micro nukes, or whether it was directed energy weapons, or anything else they could find to create a different theory about what happened and argue over the details of that theory. And then, of course, anybody who didn't agree with the theory was immediately called a government agent. So you had both sides of each theory calling each other controlled opposition, and this is exactly how it works: divide and conquer, diffuse and disrupt. And this is what has happened to the independent media right the way through, and there are always official narratives that have been pushed. And this is what I've very much noticed with Christchurch. No discussion has been allowed on Christchurch. With what I've presented when I've exposed the man in red and the car, all of this has been controlled as well. All of this has been shifted into debates about whether it was real or fake, when, as I've been saying from the beginning, the debate over whether it's real or fake is a smokescreen. It's not even an issue you need to be debating about, because you don't need to. Because with the Christchurch shooters video, we've caught the government with their hands squarely in the cookie jar without any need to debate whether it was real or hoax or whether it was any of these things. We don't have to debate any of that, because what we've got is a man on the compound, what we've got is a car leaving halfway through the event, and what we've got is an interaction between Tarrant and this man and the car. These three knew each other. So this shows that the official story is a lie. I mean, it wasn't a single shooter, no matter what happened, whether it was real, whether it was a hoax, whether it was this, whether it was that, it's all irrelevant, because the official story is that it was a lone wolf gunman, and the shooter's video clearly shows that it was not a lone wolf gunman. And if we can get some focus on that detail, we can bring the entire thing down. But all focus has been shifted from that detail. And because I've pointed out that detail, I'm now being blackjacketed by a lot of the independent media because I'm not focusing on the real hoax debate. That's what they want you to focus on, and it isn't anything else you can talk about. There's no talk about the extra players, none of that sort of stuff. You've got to be saying that the shooting at New Zealand was a hoax and not talk about any other detail of it. And it's the same thing. If you don't support the hoax narrative, there isn't any question about it. You're just named as a government agent if you don't support this narrative. So it's become apparent to me that the powers that believe they be want the hoax narrative to be pushed. They want the independent media to be pushing that all of these shootings are hoaxes. The question is why? And how did they do that? I mean, and I firmly believe that they staged a whole bunch of these things as well. I mean, Sandy Hook was staged. It was so obviously staged. You can see that nobody died at Sandy Hook. But you've got to ask why they made it so obvious. We have video footage of people just wandering around that area. We have video footage at Sandy Hook where the triage mats are empty. The ambulances are parked way, way away from the schoolyard. The ambulances aren't even being used. There's people just milling around, people just wandering around the building. I mean, and we've even got aerial footage of this, of people just wandering around and people walking in one door and out the other door, just doing circles of the building, like they're just all milling around doing nothing. And when that footage first came out, I started asking myself, why does this footage exist? Why would the news go up there and video people just aimlessly wandering around and make it so obvious? Why would they give us so much information with Sandy Hook? Why would they make it so obvious to those who can think that this was a hoax and that nobody died there? Why would they do things like the Boston bombing, make that so obvious? I mean, the Boston bombing was a joke. Within an hour of it happening, you had half the truth community there screaming out, look, this is a hoax, it's fake, it's obviously fake. I mean, we could all see it. Didn't even require any investigation to pick that one. So why did they make these things so obvious? That's the question. Why would they do that? What are they leading us into? What are they leading us into, and how controlled is it really? How controlled are all of these events? You look at the Las Vegas shooting. That was a really strange one, the Las Vegas shooting. I wouldn't be surprised, even with situations like Las Vegas, I wouldn't be surprised if at Las Vegas they did everything that people are claiming on both sides of the debate. I mean, what would you do? Think about it. If I was going to be doing these sorts of operations, if I was going to be controlling the independent media, if I was going to be leading it in a certain direction, if I wanted all of these people to be buying into all of these hoax narratives, when you stage these events, one of the most advantageous things you could do would be to create as much confusion as possible. And so with an event like Las Vegas, if I was going to stage something like that, I would have firecrackers going off, I would have guns being fired through the speakers, I would have crisis actors, and I would also have real people being shot. I'd have the real narrative and the hoax narrative all combined into the one thing, just to create as much confusion and infighting within the independent media as possible. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's what they did with that event. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, how would you do it, folks? Would you just run standard hoaxes, or would you seek to create confusion? Because that is something that benefits them the most. The more confusion they can create, and the more infighting they can create, and the more they can diffuse the resistance. And that's what it's always been about, folks. It's been about confusion, and that's what I'm seeing with Christchurch as well. That's why someone's actually created a 12-hour video about this event, which took 6.5 minutes. I mean, a 12-hour video debating whether Christchurch was a hoax or not. And they literally want me to watch a 12-hour video and debate them on every point of the 12-hour video. I mean, what a supreme waste of time, because with any event like this, you can debate any detail you want back and forth. It won't matter. It all depends on what perspective you've got, because you weren't there, and it's not even about whether it was real or a hoax. It's about, as I said, we've caught the government with their fingers in the till. We've caught them squarely with their hand in the cookie jar. because we've got the car leaving halfway through and we've got the man on the compound. And people are even now debating, well, the man was a director. He was this, he was that. The car was doing this, it was doing... It doesn't matter what the man was doing. It doesn't matter what the car was doing, because you can't possibly know what the man was doing or what the car was doing because you weren't there. And it doesn't matter what it's doing. That's another piece of confusion, another detail to argue about, to distract from the actual fact that the point is that the man was there and the car was there and the car left. The car left while Tarrant was looking at the car. It was driving away while they were looking at each other. And Tarrant saw the man standing in red because we saw the man standing in red. They were looking at each other, folks. So there was an interaction between these three elements, between Tarrant and the man and the car. They all knew each other, and that's all you need to know about the Christchurch shooting. All the rest of it is a smokescreen, because that element itself, just that detail, brings the entire official story down. That is why the video is banned, and that's what I've been trying to point out to people, and that's why I've been blackjacketed for doing so. And it's been a pretty coordinated attack that's been mounted against me, folks. Someone's even dug up a Photoshop picture that someone created of me. Remember when I was bashed a few years ago? I was bashed after a talk, and someone mocked up a Photoshop of me in hospital with all these tubes hanging out just to make fun of me. The person who created that picture is redistributing it and claiming that I've run some fundraiser or whatever, I don't know. Interesting, folks. This is the links they're going to, and I've never run any fundraisers in the whole time I've been on air. So this is what I was saying a couple of weeks ago. They can't let people see this information about this man in red and the car, and they can't let people just get some focus on the simplicity of the whole thing. They have to tie it up in details, and they can't dispute the information that I've shown you about the man in red in the car. So the only other option they've got is to attempt a character assassination against me, put a black jacket on me, and hope people don't look at the information. And it's been very, very revealing to see this happen, folks. And like I said, it's let me really see how much the independent media has been controlled, and it's been controlled right since the beginning. And I guess it must be a bit of a spanner in the works for them to have someone like me who comes along and, hey, I don't have any stake in the outcome of any of this. I don't have anything for sale. I don't have any monetizing on my channel. I don't have any books to sell. I don't have any subscriber sections. I don't do any of this for any other reason apart from the fact that it needs to be done. And I think that has really kind of put a spanner in the works. They're not used to people who won't allow themselves to be led. And they're not used to people who won't allow their egos to be stroked and allow themselves to be handled into certain directions, because that's something I've noticed as well, folks, in this last 11 years since I started doing this. People will befriend me through this movement, and then they'll attempt to lead me into a certain way of thinking. And after a year or so of me not really going in the direction that they want me to go in, they'll usually turn on me and start backstabbing me and telling people I'm a government agent because I'm not thinking the way they want me to think. I've noticed a lot of this happening. I've noticed a lot of kind of handlers come in and try to maneuver me into certain directions of activism or certain directions of thinking along the way. And I've just always remained just this independent person offering a perspective and not really caring about whether it's right or wrong or whatever, just offering a perspective, and quite happy to make mistakes as well. That's the thing, folks. We all make mistakes. The mistake that I made when I said that Vinny's sister knew someone who died at the mosque. They keep throwing this back at me as well. I said on one of the shows that I believed Vinny's sister knew someone who died at one of the mosques. I misquoted him. I got it wrong. He didn't say that at all. I came back on air and I retracted the statement and apologized for it. But no, people are still saying you deliberately spread false information. This is the sort of thing, folks. You're not allowed to make a mistake anymore. Well, I would suggest that everybody does make mistakes, folks. I probably make lots of mistakes over the years, but that's not what it's about. Like I said, I have no problem making mistakes. It's called learning. The people you've got to be concerned about are the ones who claim that they never do make mistakes, folks. I'm very wary of these sorts of people. But it has been interesting to see, folks. It's been very, very revealing to see the amount of animosity that I've attracted simply for pointing out to people that all of the speculation about hoax and CGI shell casings and no blood and all of this stuff, this is all a smokescreen. It's all damage control. And if you want to make a difference and you really want to see what's going on, You don't need to focus on any other details of the Christchurch shooter's video apart from the fact that the video clearly shows you the government is lying simply by that man in red and that car leaving halfway through. And the icing on the cake as well is that we even have random news footage of that same car being waved through a police barricade later in the day. That is the absolute icing on the cake. I mean, this information is gold, folks. It really is, if we could just get some focus on it. And that's why the big deflection. That's why the big attack. That's why the incredible focus on details and always bringing it back to the real-fake debate. And like I said, folks, I don't care if it's real. I don't care if it's fake. I don't have a stake in the outcome either way. It doesn't make any difference to me. It doesn't make any difference to the event at all. It doesn't affect it in either way whether it was real or fake, because what it's about is the legislation that comes from the event. And what I've been attempting to point out with the video is that, like I said, we've got them with their hands in the cookie jar. We can prove they're lying. They shouldn't be confiscating the guns of the New Zealand people. This wasn't a lone wolf shooter. This was a staged operation. The government was involved. The police were involved. We've got them on video. We know it. We know it. It's not even debatable. It's an open and shut case. We've got them on video. If we can get some focus on that, folks, we'll make a difference. And if people think it's all about the real hoax debate and that's what I'm pushing, no, I'm not. I don't care either way. I don't have a stake either way, folks. You can believe it's real. You can believe it's fake. I don't care. And I don't think that you're a government agent if you don't think the way I do. And you'll find that it's the ones that are automatically jumping to that statement. This is a government-paid shill because he doesn't think like I do. These are the ones who are the government-paid shills, folks. They're doing this because they want to lead the truth community, the independent media, in a certain direction. And I would very much suggest that they desperately want people to be promoting the concept that all of these shootings are hoaxes, whether they are or not. They want people to be promoting it because that's one of the things they're going to use to roll out their censorship plan later in the year or early next year. They want the independent media to buy into this, and that's why there is such a focus on me for daring to step outside the controlled narrative. They don't want anyone looking a little deeper. And again, folks, I mean, I'm not attempting to promote the concept that it was real. And even when I went and found the stuff, the man in red and the car, the problem most people are having is the way I found it was by trying to confirm the claims that were made by James Fetzer. And I found that I wasn't able to confirm those claims. And I was wondering why they were so clumsy. I mean, if you're going to claim this is a hoax, why do things as clumsy as, say, there was CGI shell casings and he was shooting no one down the alley and there was no damage to the windscreen of the car when damage is obvious? Why put such clumsy things out there? Why was it done so rushed and so hurriedly? And when I looked, I figured it's because the video is so dangerous and so damaging that they had to create that smokescreen as quickly as they can. They had to deflect attention away from the extra players as quickly as possible, because otherwise they are toast. And that's what caused me to find this. And that, I think, is what is so important about the video. That's why it's banned, folks. And that's why they had to seek to control the narrative so quickly after the shooting, which is what I think this whole hoax meme is. Because it's an automatic response now. As soon as people see a shooting, they go, hoax, I don't need to investigate it, it's a hoax. And then they start promoting that. They haven't even looked at it. They haven't even gone and really investigated. They've just associated it with Sandy Hook, associated with the Boston bombing, and thought, we know they're all hoaxes now, so I don't need to investigate. And that's the perfect way to lead people, folks. And I would suggest that's exactly what's been done. I know a lot of people won't like me saying that, but hey, that's what it looks like to me anyway. Really step back and look at it. As I said before, why would they make Sandy Hook so obvious? Why would they do that? Why would they make Boston so obvious? And why would they make something like Las Vegas so confusing? Las Vegas was really the height of confusion. And as I said as well, I think they probably used all elements in Las Vegas just to make it as confusing as possible because it suits them to do so. It suits their agenda perfectly. And you think about it, how they set up the whole Sandy Hook thing, they set up the Boston bombing thing, they got everybody comfortable with that whole meme, that whole, okay, now we've got this thing to go on. They're all hoaxes. This was promoted widely. And even, it's the attacks straight away. Even if you question it, you get attacked. There isn't any debate. As soon as you question the narrative of hoax, you get called a shill. You get called a paid government agent. All of these sorts of things, it's so predictable and it's so controlled. And it's so obvious when you step back and look at it. But, you have this whole thing. You have Sandy Hook and the Boston bombing. Then came Pizzagate. And when Pizzagate came and everyone started attacking the pizza store, I said, hey, listen, it's not about the pizza store. Stop focusing on the pizza store because you're having your attention shifted onto the pizza store rather than on the significance of the leaked emails and what it really means. And what's going to happen is someone's going to end up going and attacking the pizza store, and then we're all going to get in trouble and say, well, look what fake news on the independent media does. It now causes violence in our society, so we need to bring in censorship and we need to start controlling the independent media. I said that on a radio show, and then the very next day, someone went and attacked the pizza store and they launched their whole fake news meme. So you've got to see how all this ties in together, how that ties in with Sandy Hook, how it ties in with Boston bombing, and how it now all leads up to Christchurch. And also see how it benefits them to have some of these events real and have some of them staged. And just let some of them unfold and go the way you want to, as long as you can control it. The Lint Cafe shooting in Sydney a year or two ago, that was so controlled. There was very likely a crazed guy in there, but it was the police who killed all the people. The gunman didn't shoot anybody. The police cordoned the whole area off and they arranged the whole thing. And the whole thing was obviously staged. Same with the whole drive-by car thing that they did in Melbourne, and they ended up setting up all those bollards in Melbourne. These things are so staged. So much of these events are staged. Staged, yes. All of them are staged, but not all of them are hoaxes. That's the point. Now, it wouldn't be purposeful for them to hoax all of them because it wouldn't work for them. The narrative would be too predictable, and it wouldn't work to control the independent media the way they need to. It wouldn't work to lead the independent media the way they need to lead them. These people think several moves ahead in all the plays that they do, ladies and gentlemen. And when I look at this, I just see how so much of this whole so-called truth movement has been one big fishing exercise and one big method of controlling the narrative, finding all the people who are awake and then appealing to their adventurous side and their imaginative side and firing up their imagination and leading them in the direction you want to lead them, because it's appealing for them to go in that direction. It's exciting for them to go in that direction. Now, when you step back and look at it and you see the larger play that is going on here and you see where they really want to head us, and they're not changing the direction, folks. They want to control society and move society in a certain direction, and they want to divide the people, and they want to corral all the so-called truthers into their own little pen where they're sitting there and they're all identified and they're all able to be controlled. And that's what I see happening. And when you step back and look at it, it all really does become quite obvious. I think we've reached break time here, folks. I'm going to have to leave it there for now, and we'll go and have a break. Thank you for joining me on the air today. Sorry about the peacock noise happening, but that's just the way it is. But I'll be back to speak to you again in a few minutes, folks. And welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, look, I think this whole thing has been a play. And since becoming involved in the so-called truth movement, the motivation that got me wanting to be involved was I simply wanted to create freedom. I wanted to be some sort of a voice that was helping to just inspire others to discover themselves, rediscover themselves, and be someone who was helping to create the future that we want, someone who would be instrumental in creating freedom. It's very difficult to go through life knowing the things that you know and just having the information and not doing anything about it. You get to a certain point in life where you've got a certain amount of information and you think, well, it's kind of irresponsible for me not to be doing something with this. And so you start sharing it with others just out of the necessity of doing so. And so that's what I did. And I was kind of even surprised when people started to listen, because when I first started doing this, I didn't even think anyone would listen. I didn't think people would be too concerned with what someone from Australia was saying. It's a sort of an Americentric world, and I didn't think my voice would make any difference at all. In fact, when I first released my very first film back in 2008, my very first film called The Big Picture, I didn't even use my voice. I used a computer voice. It was the best voice I could find. But I didn't want to use my voice because I thought there's no way people are going to want to listen to my voice. They're going to ignore the information if it's coming from my voice, because I've never really liked my voice. I always had this sort of a thing about it. I never thought it was a good voice. And so I actually didn't even want people to hear my voice. I just wanted them to get the information. It wasn't until someone recorded me actually having a bit of a conversation at a party and someone uploaded it online, and then someone said, is that your voice? And I said, yes, it is. And they said, oh my God, you should use your voice. And they actually talked me into it. And so I ended up re-recording the soundtrack to The Big Picture, and I re-released the film and released it with my voice. And that's how I sort of started using my voice for things. But I just wanted to be someone that was speaking out for truth and someone that was helping lead the world to freedom, someone who was at least helping to create awareness within people. And as I said, I was very surprised when people actually began to listen to what I was saying. Very, very strange feeling. But then when people did start to listen, I went out and I made a point of trying to meet all of the major voices in the movement that I could, just to try to create some sort of unity, just to see if there, was any real camaraderie in this movement, if there was anything anywhere that was really trying to push for freedom, or whether it was all just smoke and mirrors, And it's been an interesting ride. It really has been an interesting journey through the whole thing. I've met a lot of people that are good and good-hearted and have got their eyes focused on freedom, but I've met a lot of other people who have an agenda, just want to sell their wares and be a guru. And it's a very strange thing. This is why all the time I've really attempted to convey the reality that I'm not a guru. I'm just someone living in a shed. I'm just a guy, just like you. This is why when I go to the talks, all the conferences that I go to, I'm always out and about in the crowd, sitting around outside, just hanging out with the people. I always make myself very, very available to people because I want people to know that it's not someone special you're dealing with here. It's just a guy in a shed offering you a perspective. And I've always tried to keep true to what I can see with my own eyes. And, even when I first started doing this and I decided I would be someone who was going to start speaking out, I always remembered the words of Bill Cooper when he said, when you tell the truth, the real truth, you piss everyone off. And I've always remembered that. I've always realized that if I do call things the way I see them and don't just go with whatever the general consensus is, I'm liable to ruffle a lot of feathers, and I certainly seem to do that along the way. I've certainly done that, whether I've reported on Christchurch. And again, a lot of people have misconstrued what I've said, and there's been a big smokescreen created around what I've said, again, to lead it back into the debate between was it real or was it fake, which is not what the question is, and it's not what I'm attempting to share with people. It's a smokescreen. And I don't care, like I said, I don't care whether it's real or fake. I don't care either way. What I care about is the opportunity the video provides us for freedom, because of the video revealing to us very, very clearly that the government has their hand in the cookie jar without any debate at all. And, I think it's a huge gift to us because it's pretty well the first video I've ever seen revolving around one of these shootings or anything like that. It's the first video that I've ever seen of one of these events that actually gives us inside information revealing that the government is lying. So, I think it's a huge opportunity, and it's a shame that so many people aren't seeing it, and it's a shame that so many people are missing this opportunity. But it's understandable when I look at that, and I look at how the narrative is controlled. It's understandable why I am being blackjacketed so much for pointing this out, because, as I said, this is very, very dangerous, very, very damaging information for the government. And it's also very, very damaging information for the controlled aspect of the independent media. They don't want people looking at things this way. They just want people going with the accepted official independent narrative and pushing that. And like I said, folks, I think there's a reason for it. I think this is all going to come back to Sandy Hook, and it's going to come back to Pizzagate. It's going to all be revolving around the fake news meme, and it's all going to be used to bring about censorship. This is what they're going to use to lock us down. The independent media is being portrayed to the mainstream people out there as a bunch of conspiracy theorists who think all shootings are hoaxes, no one ever dies, they send hate mail to victims' families, and they will think the earth is flat. That is the view that most mainstream people now have of the independent media. And irrespective of what your belief system is, whether you believe things are hoaxes or whether you believe the earth is round or flat or whatever, it's irrelevant. It's looking at what the bigger picture is that people see and seeing how all of this narrative has been controlled. Seeing what the independent media was, which started off as a real resistance and a real push for truth and freedom. And then through infiltration and diffuse and disrupt operations and blackjacketing and tying people up in arguments over details and bringing everything in as a conspiracy. It doesn't matter what it is, they can make a conspiracy out of it. And that's what they've done. And it's been very, very deliberate, very purposeful, and it's all led to what we're seeing right now, which is, as I said, going to be blanket censorship. They're going to roll in off the back of all this if they can get it to take hold. That's why I think I'm being attacked and trolled so much, folks. That's even, I wonder why my channel was suddenly allowed to flourish the way it did, because they held me back for so long. They held me back. Look, it took 9.5 years for me to get 29,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. People used to have an enormous amount of difficulty finding me. And then over a period of about 18 months to 2 years, it jumped up to almost 180,000 subscribers. This is like 150,000 subscribers over an 18-month to 2-year period. And I really wonder why that was. And, all the while this is happening, I've got people coming into my life, stroking my ego, attempting to mold my perspective into certain directions. And as I said, when I didn't go in that direction, suddenly I get blackjacketed. Very interesting thing, folks. And I wonder if this has all been a play as well. I wonder if they really expected me to go with this whole hoax meme and to be able to lead all of my followers into that as well, and not have any of these people looking deeper. They just don't seem to want people looking deeper, folks. But I wonder how it's all happened. I wonder how controlled and contrived all of this is. I mean, how did they keep me back so far for so long? And how did I suddenly get so many subscribers so quickly? I mean, did they just suddenly unblock me so people could find me? Or did they bump the account up? Did they send people that way? I mean, how did it all happen? It's all very, very strange, folks. And, when I look at it and I think how the ultimate plan, as I said, is to lead the opposition. And, leading the opposition, even that, people think, they're going to lead the opposition, so they're going to put certain leaders in place. And so they'll point at people like Alex Jones or whoever, all the high prominent figures. Anyone who makes it there and gets a voice, they'll say, this guy must be a leader, therefore he must be controlled opposition. But it isn't really like that. It's about leading the perspective. It's about leading the general consensus, the general zeitgeist of what people are thinking. It's like David Icke talks about, it's the manipulation of perception. And it doesn't just work for the mainstream, it also works for the independent media as well. They very much sought to manipulate the perception of people investigating things within the independent media and to lead the narrative in a direction that ultimately suits the same agenda. I can really see this happening, folks. When you step back and look at it, like I said, I think this whole thing has been one big play. I think that's why they made 9/11 so obvious, because 9/11 was a fishing exercise. They had to make it obvious. They wanted us all to see it because they needed to know where we all were. And once people got involved and got active with research into 9/11, again, they introduced the opposition to tie it all up in different theories and arguing over details. And that is how they control the narrative. That is how the divide and conquer aspect works. That is how the diffuse and disrupt operations work. And overall, it's about manipulating the perception of the people so they can continue leading the world in the same direction. It's very clever at the way they plan these things, folks, and it's a very, very effective mechanism. But when you can step back, if you can put all your belief systems aside, just don't believe anything. Just put all the cards on the table and let the story unfold, folks. This is why I often say belief is the enemy of knowledge. If you're going to adopt belief systems along the way, you're never going to figure out what's going on, because you're going to get tied into certain corrals and you're going to get led in certain areas based on your belief systems. As I said, with people looking at all these hoax things, all they had to do was stage Sandy Hook and the Boston bombing, and now everybody thinks all the shootings are hoaxes. But what if they're not? What if there's a deeper play? What if this has been done to make you think that all the shootings are hoaxes, so then they can lead you into this censorship state that they want to lead you into? Because that's what I can see happening. As I said, folks, it's important to step back and look at the bigger picture and not believe anything, not want to believe anything, not have to be right on any sort of a situation, not have to be right on any opinion. Just let the cards fall where they may, because when you do that, the picture will reveal itself for you by default. It just happens. It's just, you've got to be prepared to see it is all. And, the thing is that you're not going to see it if you allow belief systems to get in the way. As once said by Voltaire, the only certain barrier to truth is the belief that you already have it. So yeah, that's the approach that I've always adopted anyway. It's always steered me in the right direction. Certainly got me into a little bit of trouble with people. It does ruffle a few feathers when you think this way. But it's really the only way you're ever really going to find the truth, folks. As I've said so often, so much of the independent media, so much of independent or alternate research that people do, a lot of what leads people on is the thrill of the ride. The thrill of the information they're discovering. A lot of information is put out there to appeal to people's romantic senses, to people's sense of adventure, to people's sense of excitement, and to lead them in a direction that is ultimately just a gatekeeping operation, just leads them down a rabbit hole, and they don't really pay attention to what's going on around them. But it's important that people do. As I've often said, the big problem that we face here, really the only problem that we face, is a loss of self. Everything that this system is designed to do is to lead us away from ourselves. And even when we're looking for the way out, it always leads away from ourselves. Now, even with those whole hoax thing that they keep pushing with these shootings and stuff, what is the goal of this? If you even prove that something is a hoax, what does it do? How does that lead you to freedom? How do you convince the people in the mainstream out there of that? I mean, we've got stuff like Sandy Hook, we've got stuff like Boston bombing, which was so obviously a hoax, and we couldn't show them with that. So how do you show them with something like Christchurch, even if it was? It's virtually impossible. They won't ever buy into anything like that. So what you need to do is find something that they can clearly understand. And this is what I've been trying to point out is what we've got with this Christchurch shooting, because we've got the man in red, we've got the car leaving. It doesn't matter what they were doing there. What matters is they were there. And I actually even spoke to the lady over the fence here, this incredibly strange woman who lives across the fence. She's a strange person. She's like a non-existent person, as my landlord rightly describes her. Having a conversation with us like sort of talking to a flat tire. And we had a bit of a chat over the fence the other day. I turned the conversation around to Christchurch and I said to her, you do know that it wasn't a single gunman, though, because there was a car that left the mosque halfway through and there was a man in red running around the compound watching the proceedings. And she said, really? I said, yeah. And I showed her on the video and she said, well, I wonder why the mainstream media isn't reporting this, because this is pretty important information. I said, yeah, it is. So maybe there's something going on with the mainstream media, huh? Maybe they're not what people really think they are. And she kind of looked at me and she looked back at the video and she walked away scratching her head. Now, this is a woman who doesn't even look at conspiratorial stuff and would probably think I was a rather strange person for what I do. And she saw that, and she saw straight away that the government is lying. She saw straight away that the official narrative is false. And she saw straight away that she's been lied to. She got it straight away. No prompting, no debate. It was right there on the video. You can see it. The government's lying. It's not what they said. That's the power of what's in this video, folks. If people could just get some focus. And as I said, that's why I think this entire smokescreen has been created around it. And that's why I think it was so clumsy to begin with. I think that's why they just clutched at anything they could find to push the hoax meme with this, because they desperately needed to distract people away from what is really being shown to them on this video. And I know people are probably sick of me talking about it. People are saying, oh, you should talk about this, Max, it's divisive. But really, it's not divisive. Not if you actually hear what I'm saying. It's not divisive at all. I mean, you can put all of that other stuff down. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter, because what I'm pointing out to you on the video is a couple of points that aren't open for debate. They're not open for speculation. They're simply there. So, anyway. It has been an interesting ride, folks. It really has. And it's been an interesting reaction. A lot of people are getting it, though. I have been getting a lot of email from people saying, wow, I actually see what you're saying, and this is supremely important. And I've actually got a lot of email from people in New Zealand who are incredibly thankful that I've actually discovered this about this video. So, and we've seen a big pushback, the gun buyback that they're doing in New Zealand. A lot of people really do not want to support this. A lot of people are saying, no, this is not what we're going to do. We've got some questions we'd like to ask. And, they're talking about royal commissions and all sorts of stuff, but we know this will be controlled as well. What's going to be interesting to see in any type of Royal Commission at all is if there is any mention whatsoever of the extra people that were on the compound that left halfway through the proceedings. And again, folks, it's so important because of the interaction between Tarrant and the man in red and the people in the car. They all looked at each other. They all knew that the other was there. And this shows, without any shadow of a doubt, that the official narrative is a lie. That's what I mean. You don't need any other information to completely blow the official narrative out of the water than this. And all people are doing is clouding that issue with speculation and conjecture over all this other stuff that they can't prove because they weren't there. And we don't need to prove any of it. We've already got the government hands down. No debate required. It's right there on the video. And as I said, also the icing on the cake, the absolute supreme cherry on top, is the fact that that car that was seen leaving the mosque was also seen very clearly waved through a police roadblock on a random piece of news footage that we've already got. I mean, they really, really blew it with this shooting, folks. So yeah, that's why I think it's important to get some focus on it. And again, you can see why I'm being black-jacketed for pointing this out if you just want to step back and look at the bigger picture. But hey, water off a duck's back to me, folks. You can continue. I've had plenty of storms come my way before. I'll face them again. That's just the way it goes. As Bill Cooper said, when you tell the truth, you piss everyone off. And well, I guess it just comes with the job. And once again, we are getting to that time where we have pretty well reached the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me on the air today. It's always a pleasure to have your company. But thinking about things, and as I've sort of been alluding to probably for a couple of years now, I'm considering kind of winding the shows down a little bit. Possibly reducing it down to once every 2 weeks or once a month or something like that, simply because I've been trying to get some films made for the last 4 or 5 years. There's been 2 films that I'm working on. I had made a reasonable amount of progress on both of them, but then I got hacked a few months ago, probably, 4, 5, 6 months ago, and I lost 4.5 years worth of work. And it really has been quite daunting, having all of this work done and now just having it all back reduced to raw files on hard drives, and I've got to actually start compiling things all again, which I've started doing. I've actually started pulling things off the external drives and creating folders and getting myself back on the road to working on the films again. But it's just difficult to do while I'm doing the radio shows every week. And I kind of think about it and I think, well, when I first started doing this, what I originally started doing when I came on air and came onto YouTube or whatever was making films. That's what I did. And then I got the radio show, and I've been kind of doing the radio show for 11 years now, nearly 12 years, in my 12th year now. And in that time, I just haven't managed to get any more films done. I mean, I've wanted to. The last film I put out was in 2012. And, I'd already had that film kind of half made when I started doing the radio show. But even though I'd had it half made in 2010, it took me 2 years to finish it simply because I was doing a radio show every week. That's the problem, is you get into film mode and then you've got to kind of get yourself out of film mode and get back into radio mode. And half the time when I'm in film mode, whatever I happen to be thinking about for the film ends up being what I talk about on the radio. And so there's not much point putting that bit in the film if I've already done a whole show about that idea anyway. So you kind of have to give yourself space in order to complete these projects. And I really do want to honor the project of this film, especially the film about the Amazon that I really wanted to put out quite a few years ago. And I really would like to get these films done. So, yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about winding the shows down a little bit for a while. I just don't know how anyone would feel about that, but I figured I'd put it out there and see what the reaction is. As I've also mentioned, I want to sort of make 2020 probably the last year that I do any traveling for a while as well. I've been kind of traveling most of my life, and it's been back in earnest. I had sort of 10 or 15 years off traveling, even 20 years off traveling, really. But then I've sort of gotten back into the flow of that since 2012 as well. And I've been away from home at least 6 months of the year every year since 2012. And so I kind of would like to wind that down as well and just maybe concentrate on getting some films out and getting some information out to people that way. A lot of the stuff that we come online to do, with the radio shows and the stuff we do, We do this because we want to create action on the ground, and I'm actually seeing a lot of action. I'm seeing a lot of responses to the shows over the years, and I'm seeing a lot of action groups have formed from people that have listened to the shows and they've put the ideas into action. Even the 5G action that I'm seeing on the ground here, it's so inspiring to see that. And it's so relieving to be able to perhaps put that torch down for a little while and let other people carry it for a while is a good thing as well. You know, it's been a great relief for me to see this type of action blooming in the community and seeing so many people sort of wake up to what's going on. So I'm just sort of tossing these ideas around at the moment, folks. I mean, I'm not disappearing sort of immediately if that does happen, even if I do decide to wind it back to bi-weekly or once a month or whatever. I'm just kind of putting the feelers out there now to see how people would feel about that. I know it's a kind of a regular Saturday morning thing for a lot of people listening to the show, so I just want to put it out there and see how that goes down. But it's something that I've thought about for a while, and it's something that I think would assist me in finishing these films. You know, every time I try to get back into that mode, I can only kind of get into it for a few hours, and then I've got to go back to radio mode. That's the problem. And you can't just kind of switch it on, you know, switch your creative juices on, sit down and think, okay, I'm going to make a film today. Because you kind of sit down and stare at it and stare at the script and nothing comes out, and you've got to kind of be in that mode. And the easiest way to get into the mode is to actually start, you know. When you're having trouble doing these things, sort of, folks, that's the key, is to just start doing it. Because once you start, you find that you start to flow and you get into the mode. The problem is that once I do that, then I have to, like I said, get out of it to get back into radio mode every week and create a new video for that. And it's kind of like creating a 1-hour documentary every week, doing a radio show and adding a video clip to go with it, which is why sometimes you don't get relevant videos with the radio show. You just get kind of a graphic display. So yeah, anyway, that's just something to think about and something that I wanted to share with you all. And as any regular listeners will know, it's been something that's been on my mind kind of for the last couple of years. I keep having these moments where I think I'm going to stop the show for a while and work on the films, and it just never seems to happen. But I'm actually thinking about making it happen now, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, just thought I'd share that. But thank you, as always, for stopping by and listening to the show today. It's always a pleasure to have your company. As I've mentioned to you before, I'm going to be speaking at an event here on the Gold Coast in a couple of weeks called the Paradigm Shift Summit. That is on the 14th, I think, and that is being held in Surfers Paradise here on the Gold Coast. I'm also speaking at Anarchadelphia in Philadelphia on the 14th or 17th, I think, of September. You'll find a banner to that on my website, and if you use the coupon CROWHOUSE, you'll find you'll get a discount to that ticket. I've also been booked to speak at an event in Mount Shasta on September 27th. I can't really give you much more about that, but as information comes to me, I will share that with you as well. It's an avatar awakening, or it's something to do with avatars, the event. I'm really sorry I don't have the information handy to share with you. And I'm sorry for the people who are organising the event that I don't have the information to share. I should have looked it up before I came on and did this show, but that's just the way it goes. So we'll be speaking there. That's in Philadelphia on the 17th of September and at Mount Shasta on the 27th of September. I will also be speaking at Anarchapulco in February next year. And if you go to my website, thecrowhouse.com, and you click the Anarchapulco banner and go in through that entry, you will also get yourself a 5 or 10% discount on your ticket to Anarchapulco. So these are 4 events where you can come and say hi if you're anywhere within the local vicinity of those events sometime over the next few months. As I said, a couple of weeks from now in Surfers Paradise, September 17th in Philadelphia, September 27th at Mount Shasta, and I think around about February 17th, I think it would be in Acapulco, Mexico for Anarchapulco. I'll probably do a couple more gigs next year, probably do AV11 and a couple of gigs in the UK as well. And that will probably, as I said, folks, be the last year that I do any touring for a while. I really do need to take a little bit of a break from the road. I'm 62 now. Kind of seems to have come around quite quickly. It's a short ride, this life, folks. Remember to pay attention to that and enjoy yourself along the way. As I keep telling people, With all this stuff that we're doing and all this research that we're doing and all the darkness that's surrounding us, don't forget to enjoy yourself through the process. Don't forget to experience what life's really about, because that's a big part of it, folks. We tend to miss that because we're too busy doing other things. As John Lennon said, life is what happens while you're doing other things. And it's important that we pay attention to that. And don't forget about life. Don't forget about the journey, folks. Don't forget about the experience. And don't forget about enjoying yourself along the way. But thank you for joining me on the air today, folks. It's been a pleasure to have your company. Thank you to all the people who send me so many kind emails. I've got through quite a few this week, so your email is definitely getting a response soon, folks. Have no fear, it will come at some stage. It just takes a little while to get through them. Thank you to all the people who continue to support me on Patreon. Without your support, I simply could not do this work, and I thank you for allowing me to keep it going. But that is it for me, folks. I'll look forward to speaking to you again next week. Please take very good care until then. In Litecoin Cash.